The story of the day. Today we will start with an unsolved case from 70 years ago, in 1952, in the state of Missouri, USA. While describing the issue she was facing with her psychologist, she said since her school days, she had begun to show signs of inexplicably losing some memories. Sometimes she would forget what she had just done, and other times she would suddenly not remember what lessons she had studied the previous day. She had even been scolded by teachers many times, but she herself had no impression of their criticisms. The patient, nicknamed Eva, appeared shy yet cautious but hurried in front of the two psychologists. She was a woman who said that her memory loss had been getting more and more severe recently. After each time she woke up, she found herself wearing very revealing and expensive outfits that were not the kind of luxury items she could afford. Eva kept talking and then suddenly started crying. After lowering her head in thought for a while, when Eva raised her head again, her eyes were full of doubt. Then, in a light tone, she said, "Give me a cigarette," as if she had become a different person. Her demeanor, sitting posture, all had changed. Her personality had also become cheerful, like a young girl. The two psychologists called this phenomenon before them the white Eva and the black Eva, believing these were two personalities occupying the same body. Later in the treatment process, the doctors discovered a new personality called the Lady, which seemed to be a combination of the black and white Evas. She had polite manners, a gentle voice, and was very good at communicating. This is the actual record. Comparing the mental states, demeanors, and sitting postures of the black Eva, white Eva, and the Lady, there is another part here. The different personality states, the black Eva, white Eva, and the Lady, each chose different outfits to stand in front of the camera. In the next stage of treatment, the doctors found that while the white Eva did not know of the black Eva's existence, the black Eva knew about the white Eva. Meanwhile, the Lady had all the memories of both the black and white Evas, but neither the black nor white Evas knew of the Lady's existence. In 1957, these two psychologists wrote a book called The Three Faces of Eve about this case and also made a film of the same name. But outside of the book and film, the case of the black, white, and Lady Evas raised another unresolved issue. The doctors found that the black Eva was allergic to nylon, but the white Eva did not have this issue. It seemed inconceivable that multiple personalities could control whether cells experienced allergies or not. When reporters investigating the case asked the doctors about this, the doctors could only shake their heads. So the emerging issue here is whether this phenomenon of multiple personalities is dangerous or not, who is prone to it, and ultimately, is it causing parts of the body to split apart, or are there others controlling our bodies? Eastern and Western medicine have very different perspectives on this phenomenon. Today, let's discuss the iconic case of the multiple personality of Billy Milligan. People often think that if 24 people of different ages, genders, and personalities were crammed into living together in a mini apartment, one can imagine how disorderly and chaotic that apartment would be. But what if 24 different personalities occupied one person's body? What would that situation be like? Over 40 years ago, a mysterious case occurred in the United States involving a 22-year-old suspect named Billy Milligan. He was the first person in American history to be arrested for a major crime, but ultimately found not guilty by reason of insanity and released. This was because 4 psychiatrists and 1 psychologist testified that Billy suffered from multiple personality disorder. Throughout the process, from his arrest to his ultimate acquittal and release, he remained a controversial public figure. Some believed Billy truly suffered from a debilitating disorder, while others claimed he was a skilled con man. So what was the truth? In October 1977, near Ohio State University, police cars were parked on the street and officers were patrolling everywhere because within just 2 weeks, 3 young women had been attacked, forced to withdraw all the money from their bank accounts. After gathering evidence from multiple sources, the police zeroed in on one suspect, Billy Milligan. The police predicted Billy would be an extremely dangerous criminal, but in reality, when they raided his residence, Billy looked confused, as if they had arrested the wrong person. Upon searching Billy's room, the police found traces of many people having lived there. Inside were unfinished, beautiful paintings that looked like masterpieces, exercise equipment, guns and ammunition suggesting military training, and books on chemistry, biology, and medicine. Half the kitchen was clean and tidy with a vase of flowers, while the other half was messy and filthy. The police confirmed and reconfirmed that only Billy lived in this room, yet they also found evidence of his crimes, like victims' credit cards. So they handcuffed and arrested him, but on the way to the station, they found Billy sitting in the back of the car with his hands freed from the cuffs resting on his lap. My God, what kind of monster is this? A few weeks later, the doctors assisting the investigation seemed to understand what was going on. The issue wasn't that many people lived in the room, but rather that many people lived in Billy's body. The doctors called this multiple personality disorder. During one conversation, a personality inside Billy's body suddenly emphasized, "Don't keep calling us personalities. We are people." The personality stressing this was Alan, an 18-year-old with excellent communication skills, a love for life, and extremely high artistic talents. Those masterpiece paintings were his work. He was the only right-handed personality, as the others all wrote with their left hand. Alan was also the only one who smoked cigarettes. In the course of treatment, the doctors gradually discovered 10 main personalities, or 10 personalities allowed to appear in Billy's body. The first was the one in charge, Arthur, age 22. As soon as this bespectacled man spoke, one could hear his crisp British accent, definitely not an American accent Billy could mimic. Continuing to converse with Arthur, the doctors found him to be extremely calculating, poised, intelligent, yet calm, well-versed in natural sciences like physics, chemistry, and medicine, and able to write fluently in Arabic. Though stunned, the doctors initially assumed this was just an extraordinarily strong learning ability. But then the second personality emerged, and the doctors began to lose their composure. This 24-year-old man named Reagan introduced himself speaking with a guttural, authentic Slavic accent, saying he was a Yugoslav who could speak, read, and write Serbian and Croatian. Even the doctors treating Billy admitted that before each session, they wished they knew some Slavic slang terms. Otherwise, they basically could not keep up with Reagan's logic and language. Reagan was also a karate master, skilled with weapons and military knowledge, serving as the family's protector in dangerous situations. The doctors ultimately tested Billy's adrenaline levels and found that whenever he switched to Reagan, his adrenaline spiked significantly. Adrenaline is a hormone released by the adrenal glands that regulates bodily functions. It makes people braver and more energetic, so combative personalities tend to have much higher adrenaline levels than gentle ones. An innate physical response like this cannot be faked. From this observation, the doctors could deduce that Reagan and Arthur were not the same person. But the phenomenon of multiple personalities could actually regulate hormone levels. Was this really possible? Continuing their research, the doctors discovered that the ages of Arthur at 22, Reagan at 24, and the other personalities in Billy's body would never increase. They then examined more data. We all know that as the human body ages, hormone levels also decline. But when 17-year-old Billy switched to 24-year-old Reagan, his adrenaline levels returned to that of a 24-year-old. It was as if his physical body had rejuvenated itself. The doctors also monitored Billy's brainwaves when a 3-year-old personality took over, observing his brainwaves shift from an adult to a 3-year-old state. Not only were there male personalities in Billy's body, but females too, like 19-year-old Adelana with straight black hair and brown eyes that others described as having a keen, flitting gaze. While physical traits like hair and eye color could not manifest, these were the appearances the personalities described to the doctors. In Billy's mind, all the personalities were like actors on a dark stage with only one spotlight. Whichever one stood in that spotlight could take control of Billy's body, gaining consciousness and sensory perception. When someone was in the light, the others sat aside doing their own thing or sleeping. Only the one in the spotlight could interact with the physical world, experiencing tastes, temperatures, pain, etc. Whatever that personality went through became their memories. power, with some knowing a little and others nothing at all. Before treatment, Billy himself was unaware of the other personality's existence. He only knew that whenever he faced suffering as a child, he would close his eyes, and when he opened them, feel like he was somewhere else, with time having passed in a baffling way. To outside observers, whenever personalities switched in Billy's body, records from treatment sessions showed his eyes would go blank and undergo rapid eye movement, a phenomenon that occurs during dreaming. We often have very long dreams that only last a few minutes in reality, and in those few minutes, our eyes are actually moving rapidly. So the doctors suspected multiple personalities could originate similarly to dreams. At times, it seemed Billy was staring intently at his own body, mumbling as if talking to himself. Soon after, a new voice and disposition would emerge. The personalities who knew each other would communicate in two ways, either internally, with Billy appearing zoned out, or externally by taking over Billy's body, making it look like he was rapidly changing voices and mannerisms, seemingly asking and answering himself. In the course of treatment, the doctors discovered 13 other personalities housed in Billy's body. Due to their bad behavior, they were ostracized and not allowed to emerge. However, during chaotic times, they would sometimes seize opportunities from the others to appear, which often led to major problems. For example, the case of Adelana. She was good at housekeeping, could write poetry, cook, and was in charge of household chores in Billy's family. During conversations with Adelana, the doctors found that before Billy was arrested for the robbery targeting women, it was she who had pulled the trick. Adelana would push Reagan out of the spotlight trance, replacing him, then start talking to the surrounding girls. After gaining their trust, she would cause trouble. And when Reagan took over again, Adelana would slip away with their money, thinking she had used force when in fact she had just deceived them. This is why Adelana was later banned from appearing again. The third main personality was Alan, the one who emphasized to the doctors that he was a person, not a personality. The fourth was Tommy, a 16-year-old with messy brown hair and amber eyes. He played saxophone, was a skilled landscape artist, and an escape artist. The previous handcuff incident was Tommy's doing. Once during treatment, the doctors had Billy restrained, but when they returned, they found him using the restraints as a pillow, sleeping soundly, also Tommy's work. Whenever Tommy took over, Billy's joints and ligaments became extremely flexible. Tommy even described to the doctors how he dislocated his joints to escape skillfully, as if Billy's physical body had trained for this since childhood. But when others took over, Billy's physique returned to normal. Other main personalities included timid 14-year-old Tenny, afraid of strangers, especially strange men, so he could only draw still-life objects. 8-year-old David, who endured suffering. Whenever great pain struck, David would emerge to bear it all, disappearing once the danger passed, with the others having no memory of it. David was a precociously insightful and intelligent, yet pitiful child. There was also 3-year-old blonde, blue-eyed Christine with a British accent. She was the first personality created besides the real Billy. Christine had dyslexia. She could hear, write, but not read. She was Reagan's mother figure. Reagan first appeared to help Christine pick apples from a tall tree for her teacher when she was a young student, hoping to avoid punishment. From then on, Christine and Reagan formed a bond, with Reagan vowing to never harm women and children, seeing his duty as protecting the family, especially the children. The doctors also found Reagan was completely colorblind, only seeing in black and white. His paintings were also just shades of black and white. This physiological phenomenon matched his hateful, hostile psychological state. In contrast, Christine always stood alone in the corner, so people called her the child in the corner. The intelligent girl liked drawing flowers and butterflies. Once when Reagan raged, threatening to eliminate another personality with no one able to stop him, it was Christine who ran up and hugged him, calming his anger. You could say they had an inexplicable relationship.
There was also 13-year-old brother Christopher with a British accent who liked playing the harmonica. An important final personality was Billy himself. He was the one always deep asleep. The reason was that at 16, Billy had tried to commit suicide by jumping, But at that moment, Rajan emerged, pushing Billy aside and taking over his body. Later, Arthur decided it was too dangerous for Billy to be awake, so he chose to keep him asleep for 75 years until after Billy was arrested. When the doctors proposed waking Billy, he awoke terrified, asking if he was alive or dead. Learning it was now 7 years later, and he had gone from a high school student to his current state, Billy couldn't accept it and tried to bash his head against the wall to commit suicide again, so Arthur put him back to sleep. Arthur first appeared during a math test that the real Billy couldn't solve. Arthur completed all the questions swiftly and flawlessly, leading the teacher to suspect cheating since the handwriting had changed midway. The bewildered teacher couldn't fathom how this child had found such formidable assistance. The doctors also found this suspicious. How could Arthur know all this higher math that the real Billy couldn't grasp? Their guess was Arthur had learned it secretly without letting Billy or the others know. But this test was Arthur's first appearance, so logically, he could not have existed before to learn it, right? It seemed inconceivable that while appearing inattentive in class, Billy was actually having his knowledge supplemented by others he was unaware of. In later treatment, the doctors discovered 13 other unsanctioned personalities who would seize opportunities to emerge during chaotic periods, often causing major problems. These included 20-year-old Philadelphia, a Brooklynese accented liar and cursor involved in the earlier crimes. After being caught, he broke the family rules by revealing their secret, so Arthur blacklisted him. 20-year-old blonde, blue-eyed Kevin, a brilliant planner and writer who tried to sneak out during Billy's lowest points, getting himself exiled. 22-year-old bearded Australian Walter, a hunting expert with great sense of direction. 19-year-old Boston-accented female gangster April, who sometimes helped with sewing and housework. 18-year-old devoutly Jewish Martin, the only personality who was religious and could recite scripture, skilled at sculpting. Hardworking 16-year-old handyman Matters, summoned whenever Billy faced repetitive mechanical tasks. 21-year-old deceitful mimic Steve, the only one rejecting the dissociative identity diagnosis. 20-year-old comedian Lewis. 13-year-old Jackson, who could help others forget bad memories. Dreamy 17-year-old Bobby, constantly imagining travel and adventure but lacking knowledge. 4-year-old congenitally deaf and slow-reacting, unfocused Sylvia, who first appeared after breaking a vase, knowing her mother would scold her. 4-year-old Lee, appearing after Sylvia knew Billy would get in trouble for the vase. Arrogant 19-year-old Cardinal, always wanting rewards without effort. And 15-year-old Cheddar, who once worked happily with Alan at a flower shop during Billy's most joyful period until he was hurt, withdrawing into his own world and causing real-life Billy to lose that fleeting happiness. The final personality was an entirely new one that emerged during treatment, calling itself the Teacher at age 27, saying it was a combination of the other 23. When asked if it had all their memories, the witty, intelligent teacher confirmed this, then accurately recounted details from Billy's first month, like being hospitalized for choking, as well as specifics about his birth father at age 3 that the other 22 fell silent listening to, only chiming in with additional details.
Sitting opposite the teacher was psychologist Donald Keyes, who had compiled the entire recorded story into the book The Minds of Billy Milligan, based on this real-life case. In medicine, those inhabiting Billy's body are called personalities, seen as different fragmented parts of a whole. But during treatment, both Rajan and Alan objected to this term, insisting they were real, distinct people. Just look at their differing appearances, personalities, and talents. Moreover, they could converse independently with each other and the outside world. If they had physical bodies in this material space and lived as ordinary people, each would feel like an independent entity. It's hard to imagine how the American-raised Billy could have acquired things like a crisp British and Slavic accent, knowledge of Arabic and Serbian, as well as his prodigious artistic and musical abilities. Even stranger was how Billy's physiology adapted accordingly each time a new persona took over, with changes in physical traits, voice, characteristics, and even brainwave patterns. It almost seems like the human body is akin to an article of clothing that manifests differently depending on who is wearing it. Or, one could say the human will and mental power can somehow direct the physical state. This makes one case from Germany even more perplexing, of a blind woman with multiple personalities who could restore her vision whenever certain personas took over. In Munich, psychiatrist Bruno Waldnagel presented such a case involving a blind German woman referred to as PT. When she first visited the doctor, PT was completely blind and had to bring a guide dog. She told Dr. Waldnagel that an accident at age 20 had caused her blindness. Examining her medical records, the doctor found damage to her brain's visual cortex, but not to her eyes themselves. During treatment, Dr. Waldnagel discovered PT suffered from dissociative identity disorder with at least 10 distinct personalities in her body, each with their own name, gender, voice, and even language, speaking either German or English. But the most astounding finding was that when PT switched to a certain teenage persona, her vision was restored. Brain scans showed that when PT was blind, her visual cortex showed no response to images. But as the teenage persona, it reacted normally. The doctor believed PT's blindness was psychosomatic. She had suppressed her own vision by believing she was blind. After years of treatment, 8 of PT's personas regained their sight, but 2 remained completely blind. This was because these 2 had intense emotional trauma from the accident and felt they didn't need or want to see. This case demonstrates the remarkable power of the mind that we often underestimate. Normally, we should view ourselves and others in a more positive light, with more encouragement and trust. Who knows what surprising results we may reap? The Western medical diagnosis of dissociative identity disorder differs from traditional Eastern perspectives. In Western medicine, it is considered a psychological disorder under the dissociative spectrum. Statistics show 0.01 to 1% of the global population suffers from it. The latest Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders has renamed it from the more commonly known term multiple personality disorder to dissociative identity disorder, DID. To treat DID, Western doctors try to gradually reintegrate the different personas into one unified, stable identity, like the teacher persona in Billy's case. But in Eastern medicine, the cause of multiple personalities is seen as the person abandoning their core consciousness, allowing an external spiritual entity to interfere and manifest different behavioral characteristics. The key symptoms are the lack of a clear conscious mind state and inexplicable behaviors confusing to others. When the core consciousness is not lucid and the person's vital energies are insufficient, deviant spiritual forces can invade. Eastern traditions believe the human body has 13 spirit gateways that allow exchange between the body and external world. If these gateways open when the core consciousness is weak, external spirits can enter and control the body. Closing these gateways shuts out the disturbing outside influences, causing the multiple personality symptoms to disappear. So the body is seen as like a garment that can be controlled by whoever wears it. Upon reviewing multiple case studies, most DID patients did indeed suffer extreme psychological trauma in childhood or adulthood that caused them to want to escape reality. They relinquished control of their bodies, allowing other personas to emerge that the core self was unaware of, like Billy falling into a slumber while others took over. While the phenomenon of multiple personalities sounds fascinating, for sufferers it represents immense torment. Therefore, maintaining a lucid consciousness and being in control of oneself is extremely important. There are times when in an irrational state, we have done things that, looking back, we really regret and wonder why we acted that way. It was nothing like ourselves. If we compare it to the above cases, it could be similar. In that moment of losing rationality, it was no longer truly us. Ourselves at that point were controlled by emotions of outrage, anger, hatred. For most of us, it's not as severe as dissociative identity disorder, but still, a person who always maintains a peaceful, virtuous state, constantly reminding themselves to exercise self-control, will be able to calmly resolve problems when it matters. Conversely, if one is always hot-tempered, blaming, selfish, blaming others, it's very easy to ruin everything. There's a saying that has stuck with me for a very long time. I don't know since when. Decisions made in anger are usually mistakes. I don't know what you think. Have you ever made any decisions while out of control that you ended up regretting? Do you feel that maintaining a lucid consciousness is truly important? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And that's where we'll end our sharing for today. If you found this video helpful, don't forget to share it with a friend. Thank you all so much. Goodbye, and see you again.